Jordan, you mentioned that you created Jetson Capital because you had been to a number of events where there were mostly funds, general partners, and not enough limited partners. Before you created Jetson Capital, did you also talk with others who found the same to be the case?
Absolutely. And I never want to put other events in a negative light. I know a lot of great event hosts, they're wonderful people. They put on phenomenal, spectacular productions. Definitely love what they've built. I did feel over the years that there was a need in the market that wasn't being served. There's a lot of events out there for communities and especially for education and things like that. I thought that was well filled. What I thought was missing was something specifically focused on networking and two types of networking specifically. One was investor and family office peer to peer networking, LPs meeting other LPs, if you will. And then number two was effective GP and LP networking, something where you could go to an event, and if you were looking for deals, you got some healthy deal flow, but it wasn't overwhelming. Um, so I'd go to a lot of other events, and unfortunately, that was often the case. You go to an event, and people find out that you're a family office or that you have capital, and suddenly you're getting business cards thrown at your face, and people are tackling you and saying, "Give me money, give me money, give me money," without even asking, about what your buy box is or what your thesis is. Now, I thought that was part of why a lot of LPs didn't go to many events was because they didn't want to show up and get solicited to intensely. On the flip side, I've also attended events as a fundraiser, and although you can make some good connections for a lot of the options out there, unfortunately, you're primarily meeting other fundraisers or service providers, which are great if you're looking for deals. But if you're going to an event to raise capital and you only meet other people that also need capital, it's relatively difficult. So, making it so that these Jets and Capital events were something that investors wanted to attend. That was important, so they'd actually show up. They had a good time, had a good experience, wanted to come back, etc. But then number two, that the folks that were coming to fundraise weren't completely overwhelmed, didn't feel like there was a lot of competition. And that's why we have that ratio at our events of 80-20. 80% are the allocators who are, there for the purpose of finding deals. We can verify liquidity, verify intent. 20% are those fundraisers and service providers who have an opportunity that they're looking to present.
Got it. That makes sense. And how do you approach building the event so that the relationships between different members evolve naturally?
Ooh, that's a good one. I I found the way that investors and families uh, do deals with each other, whether that's at a charity gala or on the golf course or wherever, is they prioritize building the relationship first. You can usually tell who's an allocator and who's a fundraiser by if they jump into a conversation with a "What do you do?" "What can you do for me?" versus a lot more casual, "Tell me about you, how's life, family, hobbies, etc." And not to say that's a primary defining factor, but it reflects the mindset of um, investors like to get to know each other and see if they like each other and trust each other. And that's when the conversation comes up of let's do a transaction. I had an event that we did in Vegas a couple years ago, and we had outside of the big hangar event or before it, we had a VIP dinner, and the it was just some tables spread out, and the table that me and my wife found was open, and we found two of our relatively high level 10-figure plus VIPs that were there, and they conveniently decided to sit down at that table, and my wife and I were pumped. We are like, oh, these are the big VIPs. We're gonna get to know them and tell them what we're working on, and this is gonna be great. And the next 2 hours of that dinner were very eye opening for me because those two high level VIPs spent the entire time talking about religion, talking about politics, making dirty jokes, and just kind of chit chatting. You know, there was a little bit of, hey, what do you do? There's a little bit of, hey, what are you working on? But it wasn't the typical intense, here's what I'm doing, here's what I need, here's my focus, yada, yada, yada. It was very, very like building a relationship with a new friend. And then after that dinner, me and my wife chatted, and I thought that wasn't very beneficial. It's like, oh crap, we wasted that opportunity. They were just, doing whatever the whole time. I got a call from one of them a few days later after the main hangar event, and they said, "Hey, thanks for introducing me to Alex. We're looking to do a transaction together. We got some deals that we're working on." And that taught me that although you would think after that one meeting, oh, I didn't raise money or nothing happened. That wasn't the case. The trust and relationship was built. So that way, when a follow up text or a follow up call happened, it was, I like that guy. I built a good relationship with him. Let's do something together. So that's been a big one where at these events, we try and make it so the environment is casual. I compare it to a charity gala. There's not people running around with pitch decks trying to give them to each other. We do have break-off meetings that are pre-arranged sometimes just out of request from some of the allocators. But in general, it's build relationships, get to know each other, enjoy the planes, the cars, the food, the drinks. It's very much we want to get to know each other as humans first. And I say that from stage. Get to know each other as people. That's when the transactions happen, is after that.
Got it. And what do you look for in people who get approved to attend a Jetson Capital event? Because I know you vet everyone to the point where you know everyone's purpose for being there.
Yeah, absolutely. For that 80% of the room that are the allocators, we verify intent and ability. And I say that because I get a lot of folks that call and say, "Hey, I'm an investor," or we're a family office. And then you dive into it and you find out, the investor is really just raising for a fund. And then maybe after they raise money, then they might be able to invest, but their title isn't necessarily reflecting what they're doing. Or the family office isn't there to allocate; they're there to find clients or whatever it may be. Pitch their offering, and so it's very much, hey, I don't care what your title is or what you call yourself. What are you coming to this event to do? And on the flip side, I get a lot of folks that are, oh, we're a business owner. We own a construction company. And you'd normally think, oh, that's just a business operator. Then you build a relationship and dive into it a little more. And it turns out they're one of the largest ones in that city, and they're investing millions into other deals. They're not just a construction company, So it's very much vetting them, at least on the allocator side, to see what's your intention. Why are you coming to this event? And we have to have that hard conversation sometimes of, hey, I know you call yourself a family office, but you're not coming here to allocate. You're coming here to find clients. So you're technically a fundraiser. So that's a big thing, is if they're an allocator, that 80% of the room, are they primarily there to find deals? Are they liquid? Are they the decision maker for their company? Do they have at least 7 figures more of capital that they're looking to throw around? That's the priority for those allocators. On the fundraiser side, it's very much, obviously it's a paid ticket for them. It's a paid ticket for, some of the allocators too. Some of the bigger boys come in for free, but in general, it's a couple $100 for the allocators. It's a lot more for the fundraisers, partially because it's an intentional barrier to entry. We don't charge the investors as much because they're the high quality people that we want in the room. So we pay for the event by either sponsors or those fundraisers that are purchasing tickets. And that barrier to entry also makes it so it's higher quality deals. We'll still sit down with them, figure out what they're raising for, figure out what their intention is. I've had folks very frequently come to me and say, "Hey, we're desperately trying to do our raise, and we haven't raised any money. We're down to our last couple of grand in marketing budget. Should we spend that on getting tickets?" And I say, absolutely not. Let me connect you with my guy that does bridge loans. Like, do not be coming to the event trying to be the desperate one in the room to try and save your company. That's not appealing to the investors. You're not going to have a good time there. But folks that have a good deal, it can be, if it's individual startups, it could be Series A to Series C. If it's funds, it could be emerging, or it could be on Fund 3. If it's service providers, again, is the offering good? Is it something that we're comfortable with our investors meeting in the room? We get the college dorm startups, if you will, that are just starting and hoping to, if I meet investors, that'll solve all my problems. We generally turn those away just because, again, we're trying to have higher quality, relatively vetted opportunities for the investors at the event.
Got it. And having hosted multiple events over the years with high net worth investors, family offices, and fund managers looking to raise cash, how has that shaped your perspective on what effective capital formation looks like?
I found it's determined on a few things. Number one is, of course, market conditions. You take the past 3 4 years have been very very intense for real estate. Private equity has been very oversaturated. You've got venture investors that have been waiting a decade to get their money back that may or may not. So there's a general consensus among those allocating that there's plenty of deals to go around. It's a supply and demand problem. There's lots of opportunities out there, more than there used to be. Information is no longer the uh, constraining point because information is free because the internet and AI. So it's not the who's on top information wise. It's can you vet the right deals and determine which ones are worth your time. I think that's big. And also, can you vet the right people and determine who's worth your time? I think because there's so much opportunities going around, investors are prioritizing yes market, yes verticals, yes returns, stuff like that. It's also the who do I want to do business with. I've seen folks that will invest in a deal that is um, a lower quality deal than other things they're getting pitched, but that deal is coming from a trusted friend, you know? And so because it's from someone that they have that long-standing relationship with, that's why they're willing to allocate compared to a superior deal that's from somebody they don't know. So I think that relationship aspect is really really important. That's something we try and emphasize with the events, with our consulting, with our fundraising. We're always trying to prioritize. Hey, buddy, that's nice that you got a deal, but that doesn't make you special. And people don't want to hear that. People want to hear, "Oh, my deal is the best thing since sliced bread, and there's nothing like it." I probably get pitched the deal of a lifetime twice a week. You'll never hear this. You'll never see this again. You got to be polite and say that's nice. But in general, again, this notion that I have a deal, therefore investors want me, is unfortunately not the case. What is the case is I have something proprietary and I have relationships, and on top of that, I have a good deal. That's where we see clients and attendees really shine.
Got it. And how has this understanding of trust shaped how you view um, allocations into private market funds? Like I'm sure there's some cases where an allocator didn't really trust the general partner and still allocate, and then they didn't end up doing another deal in the future
Yep.
or things of that sort. Could you talk to that dynamic?
I think it's a mix of team and track record and um, how that evolves. Yes, we get pitch deals all the time, and I know folks that will invest in a deal that they found out about 2 weeks ago. That's definitely happened before. Um, those happen not because they have a long-standing relationship, but because the deal is far superior. It's from a trusted source, and there's other means of verifying things. People have this idea that the deal quality alone, they can walk into a random room with no background, no referrals, no track record, no financials to justify their claims, and basically say, "Hey, because I think this is cool, you should too, and you should give me money." And that's not the case. There's like I said, there's a oversupply, and so there's a lot more competition. So you have to have a better deal, a better team, better returns, especially better track record. Have you done it before? Has your team done it before? Are they currently doing it? Having something tangible aside from I've got a good deal, that's the big focus here outside of those relationships.
Got it. And how do the curated events at Jetson Capital create that environment that's difficult to replicate online or at
Yeah.
a traditional hotel or venue like that?
I think it's a few things. Number one, we try and create these events to be something that investors want to attend. I could call them and say, "Hey, we're doing another convention with speakers you've already heard at the Marriott, and you have to sit in a chair for 9 hours and listen to panels." And they'll say no because that's what they get invited to every week. Or I can call them and say, "Hey, we've got trackside Formula One tickets and a presidential candidate and a jet hangar with supercars and planes." And 9 times out of 10, they're like, "Holy crap. Yeah, sign me up. I'm in. Where do I need to be and when?" It's the fun appeal that a lot of folks are looking for. So yes, it's the fun and sexy aspect. That's one thing. It's also the curation. It's the, hey, we have a big team that does a lot of work over many months to make sure the room is full of people like you, other investors, other allocators, other people of means that are able to do something with those resources, essentially. So there's appeal there of being with peers, of being in a unique location. And then also we have really brief presentations. It's only 30, 45 minutes total of stage time. We do a couple sponsors because they pay for the event. We give them some time. And then we end with a nonprofit charity. We feature a new charity at every event. We just did a youth sports one in Atlanta last week, and we're going to have St. Jude Children's Hospital at our Vegas one in November. So we take the opportunity of, we have folks with resources and power in the room and say, hey, let's take some time to give back to people outside of this room, if you will. So combined of all those things, the unique venue, the curation, the brief presentations, the charity, and then just in general, the environment. I tell people, hey, don't be running around pitching everybody. I usually will get a few calls after our events, and they're one or the other. Half the calls are, hey, that was amazing. That was probably the best event I've ever been to. We've already got calls lined up. My phone's blowing up. We've got soft commitments. Yeah, loved it. Let's do it again. That's a lot of the calls that I get. But there's always a few calls and emails that I get that's, I didn't like that event at all. That was a waste of time. I don't think I met a single investor. And I've found, this isn't always the case, but definitely frequently, the folks that don't have that experience that they're looking for, they're not going to all the events. They're not trying to take advantage of the network. They're not networking in the WhatsApp community beforehand. And I think most importantly, they're walking around the room with this, here's my pitch deck. Are you investing in multifamily in Arkansas? No? Okay, move on to the next one. And I say that because I've seen multiple times where I'm talking to an investor that I know for a fact is investing. I know that they've written a check to one of our buddies or one of our clients recently, and we're chatting with them at an event, and someone will butt in and interrupt the conversation, say, hey, are you one of the families or one of the investors here? And the investor basically lies to him. No, we're just raising for a venture fund. That's why we're here. Oh, okay. And the person pitching runs away. Well, what they don't know is that investor is raising for a fund, but is also allocating into deals. But they're not generally sharing that because, again, they don't want to get hounded. They want to build relationships first. And then if they find out what you're doing and decide they like you, then they come out of the woodworks and say, hey, by the way, we're one of the allocators here. We'd actually love to hear more about what you're doing. That's where we see the folks have the most success. But it's not the preferred answer because most people want to go into a room and say, hey, I have a deal. They want investors to just be lapping at their feet. Oh, you have a deal? Oh, good. When in reality, it's, you got to go in and build a relationship first. And it takes time. You can't be in a rush. You can't be desperate. It's got to be very organic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about the fund managers who do successfully raise capital at these events? What are some of the things that they do to create that organic conversation with the allocators?
We have a webinar that we do before the event. Usually we have like a free one for everybody and then a premium that's more workshop structured. And we usually go over in there how to make the best out of the event if you're raising capital. One thing with that, especially for fund managers, is yes, build a relationship like we talked about, but have something unique and distinct and impressive about you. When you're talking to an investor, whether we like it or not, you get categorized. Oh, that guy's a startup guy. That guy's a real estate guy. That's going to come regardless. What we want is to stand out in the minds of the people that we're talking to. And you do that in two ways. Number one is have something different and unique about you. And I don't care if that's you're an Olympian or you do stamp collecting, but something unique. My dad did a lot of charity work and nonprofit work in very unique spaces. And that was obviously some great work that he did, but it conveniently made it so when he was talking to people, he was this philanthropist that did, anti-trafficking work in foreign countries. And that was a really unique thing that people wanted to talk to him about. And then as they build that relationship, it was, well, what else are you doing outside of the philanthropy? Well, we've got a real estate fund. And bringing that up after that initial connection is made is so much more effective than if it was started with that. If you walk into a conversation and say, hey, we have a real estate fund and we need money, so does most people we talk to. If it's we built a relationship, there's something unique about them, that helps. That's the first thing. The second thing is value to the investor. I feel like when we're raising capital, our social battery goes out the window. We kind of don't remember how to get to know people and make friendships and such. And I say that because when you're talking to an investor, and this is something that my dad did, this is something that we do and we have our clients do, you get to know what they're working on and you find out what's important to them, whether it's personal or business. And you do that specifically because when you're following up with them, like Pete, let's say me and you met at an event and I could either send you a text afterwards that said, hey, I'm Jordan. I'm the one that's pitching the hemp deal to save the Great Salt Lake. And you might say, oh, that dude's just pitching money. He's probably got some good, cool project with that, but whatever. He's just pitching me money. Or if I text you and said, hey, Pete, you mentioned that you're doing podcasts and that you're looking for unique guests. I've got a guy that's got a huge following that's looking for more podcasts, outreach, and I think he'd be a really good guest for you. Could I connect you guys? You're a lot more likely to respond to the second one. The first one's nice, but in your mind that translates to Jordan needs money. Most people at the event do, even the investors do, so there's nothing distinct there. But if it's basically you interpreting it as, wow, Jordan can help me, you're a lot more likely to answer. And I've had that before. We've had, I had one guy that he was going through some big merger and his legal team was not doing very good at it. And I said, hey, I've got a legal team that I've worked with before that's phenomenal at this stuff. Let me make a connection. He answered immediately at like 1:00 in the morning that night because it was, hey, this is Jordan calling saying I can help you with your problems. That led to an ongoing relationship, other things down the road. But it's something where find out what they need and be the person to bring them value. I had one guy that was dating a gal and looking to get married and have kids, and he was really stressed about marriage and being a father and stuff like that. So I took a few minutes and got a bunch of church speeches and books and things that I had read or compiled or just had on file over the years. I sent him an email. I said, hey, you mentioned this, I hope these help. And that led to a much deeper relationship because it wasn't a follow-up of, hey, Justin, as I mentioned on the call, I need money. Here's our deal. Hope you like it. It was, hey, Justin, I know you mentioned you're going through this. I did some work and I want to try and help you. That's where people want to have conversations with you, whether it's reciprocating, whether it's getting on the call to just hear what you're working on. If you can't get their attention by your cool deal, do it through being unique and having something valuable for them.
Got it. That makes sense, Jordan. And what trends are you seeing today in the family office space in terms of the way they allocate across private funds?
I separate families and investors and allocators into two categories. There's the passive ones and then the operators. And I say that because we used to be the operators for a while. We used to be the I'm going to invest with you, but I want to get on the board and be helping do operations. Uh, and we did that for years, but we got really sick of babysitting founders after a while. And so we moved over to the passive category. The passive category is um, for whatever reason, I don't want to be actively managing these things. Either I've got my own focus, but I want to diversify into that space. So I'm going to throw some money at you and let me know how it goes. Or I know guys that just want to retire on their yacht and don't want to do stuff. And so it's, I decided I like you and I like your industry. Here's a check. Go have fun. That's the passive ones. Um, the other category, and this is becoming a lot more prevalent, is the active investors. It's the guys that built a company, exited, and now they're building new ones. And generally, they're either wanting to write a check to sit on the board or advise, or they want to give themselves a new job. They want a new company or fund to build alongside you. And so be cognizant of structures that they're looking for, because it's often very different than ours, or very different than what we're wanting. We've done a few funds over the years, and we'll come to people with an LP offering, and they'll say, "That's nice. I want GP, and I want control, and I want to do the whole thing, and basically, I want to take over." And sometimes it makes sense based on their personality and their experience to do that. Sometimes you got to politely say no. So to answer your question, a lot of folks are looking for more control and more involvement, whereas others are not. Others just want it to be more passive. So being cognizant of what these investors are wanting to be managing it or to not, and what structures they're open to, that's the best way to do it. We no longer, at least very frequently, come to our investors with random deals hoping that they'll like it. It's not effective. What we do is talk to our investors and say, hey, what are you investing in? What's your buy box? What's your portfolio mandates that if you got a deal in this space, what does that look like? What check sizes, what type of structure and control, what verticals, things like that. And we'll put those on file and we'll go and find deals that fit that mandate. And we found it's a lot easier to be sniping instead of, spray and pray type thing, is finding out what the money wants and then bringing the deal to them instead of vice versa.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what qualities do you find compelling in a early stage investment in your role at YXS Capital?
So with YXS, as I mentioned before, everyone has different roles and different strengths. Mine is definitely not the due diligence guy or the operator. I've tried those before, and that's not my skill set. Mine is the connector. That's why I do the events. That's why we do the fundraising, the relationship building side of things. YXS is one of a couple firms that we work with very closely. And I say closely because we work with a lot of different groups for Jetson Capital events. They're wonderful. We also have folks that we work with on a more consulting basis, either helping them scale their companies or helping them connect with investors or doing private events for those clients. Love working with them. They're really, really good opportunities there. A select few, usually about 2 a year, will actually come on to the GP and join working with them. That hemp deal that I mentioned to you earlier, that's one of them where we're working to save the Great Salt Lake by changing a lot of the folks that are farming alfalfa over to be farming hemp. We have a proprietary manufacturing process for that, for shipping crates and things like that. So that's one of the funds that we work with. YXS is the other one that we've been working with for the past year and a half, and they, track record wise, are unmatched so far. That's part of why when they came to us, I didn't say do the events or do the consulting. It was, no, I want to get on your team and work with you guys. But with YXS, we're specifically looking for companies that are going to be, I hate the cliche, the next big thing. I think that's used too much. But our track record with Fund One, we had Canva, we had Mercury, we had Wise Payments. We had some very significant unicorns that did extremely well, which is a testament, in my opinion, to how well our team is at doing their due diligence. And so with that, what we're looking for allocation wise in this is similar ones that have that potential. I think we're in the middle of an AI bubble, whether people want to acknowledge that or not. We're seeing similar trends as we did with crypto over the years, with CBD for a while. especially with the .com boom in the 90s. Very similar trends of hyper-evaluations and crazy things going on. But with YXS, we're specifically looking for ones that are going to be those outliers. The one that we're raising for right now within YXS is called Liquid AI. And we have some proprietary access to what they're doing before their Series B, but that's a good example of a extremely good company with a good track record that we believe is set to grow extremely well. So, in general, it depends on where the market is and what the deal is.
Got it. And I know you guys invest across AI, defense, fintech, robotics, just to
Sure.
name a few.
Yeah.
What do those all have in common? Is it related to what you said earlier about those have the potential to grow quickly and be the next big thing? Or are there other aspects there? Um, because I'm not familiar with all those industries, so I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
With those industries, with robotics, with tech, with health, fintech, things like that, that's where historically we have seen um, the most contributing factors for humanity progressing. And whether we like it or not, with war and defense, that's when the most significant jumps in technology have been achieved, especially in the past couple hundred years. With medical, with fintech, there's more money and resources and smart brains from Ivy League schools going into those industries, and we believe those are going to be the catalysts for technology over the next 20 to 50 years, and we want to be a part of that. And so, yes, there's great return opportunity. We're excited for that. But it's also, we want to position ourselves on the forefront of these are the next world changing technologies that are going to affect our lives the most, and I think benefit humanity the most.
Got it. And how do you balance your time as both a investor and an advisor to YXS?
My, like I said before, I stick in my lane of what I'm good at. When people are pitching me deals for YXS, I'll send them to the right people. When people are pitching us deals to help them raise capital, I'll send them to our team for due diligence. If they're pitching us to invest, I'll send them to my dad's team. It's very much my focus is primarily are building out the events, which fuels the funds and firms that we're raising money for, and the relationships that we have with the allocators. And so I just focus on those. I've got a great team that runs the majority of the Jetson Capital events. My primary thing is figuring out where we're going to have the next one and then inviting our investors. I also have sponsors and fundraisers sometimes, but in general, it's getting them uh, getting them the resources they need, and they plan most of it. Similar with our consulting, we've got a great team that handles most of our clientele. I primarily supply the connections to help them the most. That's the big thing. And then on the relationships with families and investors, same thing. I build the relationships, figure out what they're needing, and our internal systems and team help bring that to them. So it makes it so most of my day is talking to people and getting to know people and seeing what they need. And then our team and systems can be that connector and plan the events.
Got it. And what role has the relationships played on the allocation side? From your perspective, do you view it as a differentiator in sourcing?
I'd say yes. If you're getting deals coming to you and it's just a regular fund or a regular startup, yeah, they have a hard time differentiating. If you've got a high net worth family office or investor that's bringing you the deal that says, hey, we've already thrown some money at this, we're already involved and on the cap table, then it becomes almost a club deal. It's not a, hey, we're desperate for cash. It's a, we've already invested in this. Are you going to jump on the ship or not type thing? And we've seen a lot of those come, and I would argue you get a higher quality deal flow with that, um, because it's not capital going towards paying the bills and keeping the lights on. It's capital going towards growth. And so we've been able to get access to a lot of proprietary deal flow in that regard that I think stands out from some of the other stuff that we see. With that, relationships with both the fundraising side and the allocating side have been a huge catalyst for these events, for the consulting that we do, for the political work that we do. It all compounds. You get people that you met. I threw an event 4 years ago, little thing in Florida, 30 people, and built some relationships there that I didn't think would go anywhere. They were cool, high level people. And over the years, for a variety of reasons, I've been back in contact with many of those, and some of them have turned into my closest mentors, some very close friends. You don't realize initially, A, how cool some of these people are and the value they bring to the table, but B, the value they bring to you as you continue trying to bring value to them.
Got it. And can you share an example of a connection that you or someone else have made at a Jetson Capital event that proved to be worthwhile?
Lots, yeah. I got a testimonials page I can send you. It's also on our website. But we've had folks that we had one sponsor that he raised his entire $30 million round from being a sponsor at one of our events. Is that normal? No, I'm not going to say that's the default, but it was great to see that combined with their deal and the room we put together, they were able to complete that. That was really good. We've had over $1 million in charity funds that we've raised for the different nonprofits that we've used. Even at this last event, we're still getting the checks come in because some of them are immediate, some of them come over the following weeks. But we've already raised 50 grand for the nonprofit we had at that event. We had Robert F. Kennedy at one of our events back when he was running for president, helped him raise a lot of money. Byron Donalds he's running for governor right now. Got a good multiple six figures for him as well. So it's not just in the investment side, but in the impact and the civics side. When you bring power and influence and resources into a room, if the environment is right, if the relationships are right, transactions definitely happen. And it's really cool to see.
Got it. And what advice would you give, Jordan, to entrepreneurs today looking to build that credibility with experienced investors?
Approach them as a potential mentor, not as a check. It's that old notion of if you ask for money, you're going to get advice. If you ask for advice, you might get money. I've built the best relationships and arguably the best capital by, instead of it being a hi, good to meet you, give me money, it's a hi, good to meet you. You've got a lot of experience. How can I benefit you? And in return, are you willing to share some advice? That's where I've built the best relationships. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. A lot of people want to hear, no, tell me where someone's going to write me a check the second I meet them. If that's what you're looking for, then our community and events are not that. Ours are very relationships first. But coming in and providing them value and having your ask be help, that's the best way to do it. We get a lot of folks that come to us and say, hey, I need investors. I need capital. And I have to politely tell them, no, you need help. You need a new pitch deck. You need to learn how to pitch. You need people on your board. You need to, adjust your marketing or your website or your entire finances. Like there's a variety of things that we think getting on the phone with another LP is going to solve all of our problems when that's rarely the case. Folks that are having a hard time raising, I point them to either you're not in the right rooms or you don't have the right deal, or sometimes both. We help people get in the rooms. We're good at that. We have our consulting arm that helps people get their deals ready or get their business ready or scale it. One of our firms does really good at taking companies from 1 to 5 million to 50 to 100. Like helps them scale. And a lot of people think, hey, I just need capital. That'll solve all my problems. That's not always the case.
Got it. And from your perspective, how has the private capital ecosystem evolved over the past, let's say, 5 years?
They're more picky. They have more options of events to go to, of deals to look at, of people to partner with. And because of that, they're prioritizing uh, friends and family or trusted contacts or um, stuff that's industries that they really want. Raising capital, I'd argue, 10 years ago was easier. You know, if you have a good idea and a decent deck, shake some hands, kiss some babies, and you were off to the races. Now it's like I said, there's a million gurus that'll teach you how to start a business, or that you can launch a syndication or a fund from, and so everyone and their dog is now people with opportunities. And so that makes it so I wouldn't say the competition is harder, but there's more quantity and more noise that you have to dig through. And so finding ways to stand out from that noise, that's the best way to do it. I have to tell folks, um, we have a client that we were working with last year that they had a good fund with good returns, but they were pitching the wrong investors because their fund was doing a healthy 9 or 10%, just consistent, whatever it may be. And with the investors they were pitching, we had to show them, hey, the reason these guys are saying no is because they could throw this in the S&P and get the same, if not better, returns for much less risk, not having to work with a team, and not having to share the fees with you guys. So it's how do you compete with your level of returns with the S&P? Until the market crashes, that was the superior option. So it's adjusting, in their case, it was seeing what we could adjust about their pitch and then adjusting who they were pitching to. Of, hey, if you're already in the S&P, you want to diversify out of that and still get the same returns. So finding some way to make so our deal is better quality and also uh, connecting to and appealing to the right investors, that's very much needed.
Got it. And what guiding principles have you used over your career, Jordan, to build communities and be a successful advisor to funds and investor?
As Warren Buffett says, reputation above everything. Um, we get a lot of folks that we will bring value to and bring favors and bend over backwards for because I believe that trust in that relationship and that reputation supersedes any transaction. I meet folks all the time that they could be a good fit for something I'm offering, but I don't bring it up because that's not my priority. My priority is get to know them and bring them value. And then if I feel my whatever we're offering at the time could really help them, I'll absolutely bring it up. But I have one of the gentlemen that we work with for our events. We got on a call with this big investor, and my friend was, "Hey, we should pitch him to be a sponsor at our next event. Get some revenue in." And I pushed back with him on the call with the gentleman on the phone. I said, "Hey, no, I disagree. I don't think a sponsorship would be good here. I think let's build a relationship. Let's see how we can help you. I don't want to have my first call with you be asking you for money to come to an event that you've never been to. I want to bring you to our events, show you what we can do. And if you find value from that, then you call me and tell me if you want to get on stage at the next one." And so it's prioritizing that relationship before every transaction. And I know that that's not the most economic thing to do. My COO gets on me all the time of we need to monetize these guys more, but the long-term goal is the relationship, and I think the economics will follow as that's built.
Got it. And what are some events at Jetson Capital that you're excited about over the next, let's say, 18 to 24 months?
Yeah. This year's focus is sports. We had a hangar event at the Super Bowl in San Francisco earlier this year, and we just did one in Atlanta for the World Cup games that they had. That was really fun. The other Jetson Capital we have this year is going to be in November in Vegas during the F1 races. So we're already getting hotels and putting everything together for that. That's the one that we'll be featuring St. Jude, like we talked about. And next year we're still figuring things out, but we know we want to do somewhere on the West Coast, likely Scottsdale or Phoenix. There's some good conferences out there that we're looking to partner with. And then the fun one that I'll tease is where we want to do rockets in capital. There's enough rocket launches going on at Cape Canaveral in Florida that we've got the connections to be able to do something at one of their hangars. And potentially during a rocket launch is the goal for next year. So still putting those together, but again, the goal is make something unique and fun that the attendees are like, oh wow, that's cool, that's different, and then you make it so it's a valuable enough room that the fun wears off eventually. If there's also ROI tied to that, that's the goal. Is make it fun but also productive.
Got it. And from your perspective, what are some great habits that fund managers should use today when looking to build relationships with LPs
Mm.
over whether it be from the private side or eventually more institutional type allocators?
And this is specifically for GPs or emerging funds or what demographic?
GPs.
GPs. I think it's a few fold. Number one, make sure you got the right butts in the right seats. I've got a lot of folks that come to me and say they're a one man band and that we should give them money. And we have the, well, what happens if you get hit by a bus clause that my friend talks about in his groups. And, it's always good that the investor wants to invest in you, because of the founder. But at the same time, you need support structures. So whether that's if you're the Steve Jobs that does the sales, if you have a Steve Wozniak that does the operations, that's fine. Whether that's hiring a firm, like ours or others to help with the marketing or the pitching or the relations or whatever it may be, whether it's putting a team together yourself, being the guy that does everything is necessary at the beginning, but shouldn't be the norm because it's a lot harder to raise capital with that. Part of what we're doing with YXS is, yeah, we've got a great track record and great deals, but we're also bringing in KKR and NVIDIA's put us on their venture platform. And we're just getting as many high level people that know what they're doing to be the subsidiaries with the fund as possible. And that's helping significantly. A, because they see the vision in what we're building. B, because that's peace of mind for the investors of, hey, we're not just doing everything ourselves. We've got good firms that are doing the stuff that I'm not good at, if you will. So it's like I said earlier, stick to what your focus is. If I was raising a fund that I was the one doing due diligence on deals, I wouldn't invest money in that because I'm not good at doing due diligence on deals. I trust the smart guys to be doing that. I'm the connector, and that's the value that I bring is in the people in the network. So I'd say for emerging or for fund managers in general, making sure you've got the right butts in the right seats. That's a big one. Making sure your deal is good, getting feedback instead of capital, like we talked about earlier. That's a huge one. And like I've emphasized throughout this whole thing is build relationships first.